Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Has your marketing gone bitter or sour? Sit back and enjoy top shelf strategies from the search bar, where we're serving up insights for your digital marketing to work successfully. I am your host, Eric Ritter, SEO sommelier and founder, CEO of Digital Neighbor, a friendly neighborhood marketing and lead generation company based right here in Tampa, Florida. I'm really excited for today's episode as I'm joined by Michelle Delker, founder and CEO of the Stanley CFO Group. And we're going to discuss how she's become a trusted advisor by her clients to help them run financially healthy businesses. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining today. Before we get started, I'm just curious. I've never had a fractional CFO on the podcast before. Can you tell our listeners what is a fractional CFO and what does a fractional CFO do?
It's funny, right? It sounds a little odd, like a fraction of a person.
Yeah.
But essentially, a fractional CFO is a CFO that serves organizations that don't have an appetite for a permanent full-time CFO. So smaller organizations could be anywhere from 5 million to 50 million. Maybe they don't have a sitting CFO, but it doesn't mean they don't have a need for financial insights.
Right.
You can engage a fractional CFO to support whatever it is that you need, wherever you are in your growth journey.
Amazing. Thank you, Michelle. I can't wait to get into it with you today and talk about all this.
Awesome.
So this is going to be a fun one today, everyone. As you know, we always start with the roots, right? We keep it on brand here for wine. So let's talk about your roots a little bit, Michelle, here. If you can just tell me briefly where you're from and where you grew up.
Oh my goodness. More about me. I'm so excited.
Yes.
So I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we moved to Tampa when I was a teenager in high school. So I actually graduated from high school here.
Nice. Okay. So I don't hear any accent from Louisiana. Are you sure that's where you're from?
I worked really hard to not have the accent.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, you got me fooled. So
Thank you.
So let's keep going here, right? So if we're talking about the new year here, I really want to understand, what are you passionate about going into 2024, Michelle?
So it sounds silly to say out loud, but I get really excited to help people understand things that they maybe don't inherently know. And so the financial piece is a huge part of that, especially for founders, visionary entrepreneurs. And so I'm really excited because it's a bit of a tenuous environment in the marketplace today. And there's a lot of opportunity to make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have like a top few things where you see opportunity when you come into a business? Do you have like almost like, instead of frequently asked questions, frequently seen opportunities for these businesses that you go into?
Yes. So we were talking earlier about a playbook. And so there's a lot of standard blocking and tackling that we usually deploy when we meet a client. There are normally pretty big blind spots as it relates to efficiencies that can be garnered. And so one of the first things that we do is really get to know the entrepreneur, understand their vision, their mission, their values, because that's going to drive our plan for them. And then we take a thorough picture of the landscape to better understand what opportunities exist. A lot of times there's an opportunity to reduce redundancies. So we're garnering expense savings and usually an opportunity to bolster high profit sales.
That's amazing. And it sounds like it goes well beyond just finance, right? That you help with a lot of other things. And we'll come to that later. But first, I want to understand, how did you get interested in finance? Because that seems to be the core of all this.
So it's embarrassing, but I really am very, very nerdy. And at the core, I am an accountant, tried and true. So I took a bookkeeping class in high school, Lato High School here in Tampa, and everything made sense. Everything came together. The world stopped turning. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Right? That happens, huh?
So
Awesome.
I got an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in the CPA. So accounting all the way. And after about a decade of being an accountant, I made my way into financial planning and analysis. And that's where the magic really happened. People don't often realize that they're separate and distinct. There's not a lot of overlap. And when you have the ability to understand the accounting landscape, and then you can layer in some of the analytical components from a financial analysis perspective, you have the keys to the castle. There's nothing you can't do. So yeah, I found my way to that probably 15 years ago.
So the analytical part to me sounds almost like you're doing a little bit of forecasting as well.
For sure. Yeah.
But I hope it's not like a meteorologist, right? So you're actually making a forecast that's going to help the business be successful, right?
So it's telling the story. It's looking at all of the pieces and parts and really creating a comprehensive picture. So when you and I talk, I make a lot of faces. I'm evaluating everything that you're saying, and then in my head, I'm building a picture because that's how I understand things and that's how I can experience things. And so being successful in finance there are such incredible parallels between building that picture and telling the story, right?
Yeah.
So it's far beyond just a number on a page. It's really the essence of the business. And once you understand that, you can craft a plan to help the business get to where the owner wants to be.
That's amazing. And it seems like you were able to go on that journey kind of pretty quickly, kind of from being an accountant. I'm assuming that's kind of what the starting point is, and then adding in the other layers of the analytical and everything else, kind of getting all that going. So, Michelle, when did you realize that you were capable of being a fractional CFO and helping those businesses, right? Like, was there kind of, you took that course in high school where everything clicked, right? And like, oh, this is my place. Was there a similar experience or a similar inflection point when you realize this CFO kind of thing is where I want to end up?
How much do you want to know? Because
we got plenty of time.
I know that I look so young, but it's been a journey over the years, and I would say definitely a path through purpose. So the first decade of my career was spent with a large Fortune 500 organization. That's where I got to do all of the new accountant things, the little baby staff accountant to a senior, and then ultimately rotated last to financial planning and analysis.
Did you do like the expense reports for people kind of coming out, like those kind of things?
I'd audit the expense reports. So if we thought there was malfeasance or fraud, I would dig into the receipts and make a determination as to whether or not something was amiss.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So towards the end of my tenure, I had my second baby. And while this organization was a great place to learn and grow, because it was so large, each function had its own separate and distinct box. And so there wasn't so much opportunity to stretch and grow beyond that. And I was looking to stretch and grow more, like young, full of excitement and energy. And so I took a leadership position with a local healthcare startup. And that's really where things started to come together, because all of the groundwork that had been laid for me by this larger organization, I was able to put into play. And then after a few years there, really honing some of that leadership, I had an opportunity to move into the skilled nursing sector. And I will say sitting as a CFO in skilled nursing throughout the pandemic was an incredibly eye-opening experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So I just want to go back real quick. So it seems like as you take a sip of wine there, if you want to, Michelle, that's absolutely. This is, by the way, for our listeners, people watching on YouTube, this is the first episode we've actually opened a bottle of wine.
You're kidding.
They've always just been sitting here. I've always wanted to open them. So you're the first guest that I am having actually a bottle of wine with. So
I'm a bad influence. That's what he's saying.
I wouldn't go that far. But just to come back to being at that larger Fortune 500 and then going to a startup, it almost seems like you needed to wait your turn at that larger organization, but you had the skills, right? So you didn't have to wait for your turn anymore because now you could actually apply those skills, right? So what made you so confident and what kind of gave you kind of that, I guess, grit that you felt like, hey, it's time for me to jump and go somewhere else so that I can actually apply these skills I have?
So it was actually having my second baby. I will say I've always been ambitious and I really enjoy what I do. So working long hours, it's about what we're able to accomplish, not the time that we're punching on the clock. But something about having that second baby, it was like, okay, it's time. I want to set a good example. I want them to see what I'm doing. Now's the moment.
Fantastic. So, and I interrupted. So you were talking from during the pandemic, you went into healthcare, right? Which must have been, like, as you said, I think very eye-opening there. So if you want to talk about that a little bit more.
So my dad was diagnosed with advanced Parkinson's disease back in 2016. And so thank you so much. So it opened my eyes to a whole new sector of healthcare that I wasn't familiar with, and that was skilled nursing. And so I didn't know it existed. I only knew like Golden Girls when Dorothy would threaten to send Ma to Shady Pines. Do you remember? She'd say, Shady Pines, Ma, right? So when my dad got sick and he couldn't any longer button his own buttons and he had to have assistance, I really wanted to understand what this sector did. Yeah. And so I transitioned to work in the sector because while I'm not a clinician, I thought, maybe I can help by, doing some things behind the scenes. And what I found was that the sector itself was almost as underserved as the folks that it was caring for. And so for me, I wanted to get them what they needed, what they deserved.
Yeah.
And during that time, I found that some of my friends who were entrepreneurs were similarly positioned in that they were doing incredible work. They were very thoughtful. They had wonderful things to offer, but they weren't getting what they needed to be as successful as they could. And so as I was coming up as a CFO for this larger organization and forging professional relationships, I was learning that there was a very clear and distinct market where folks weren't being served.
Right. So definitely, so you saw opportunity in there. So it sounds like that's what, again, the passion kind of kicked in there, right? So kind of combining the financial side, the analytic side, and now the passion for that.
Yes.
So you already talked about kind of the skilled nursing. Is there any other projects maybe, or any other things that you've done that you're maybe proud of?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So we launched the business in February of 2022. And since then have had an opportunity to work with almost 10 different clients, and everything ranging from education to healthcare to technology to professional services. So runs the gamut, which has been really interesting. We have
quite the diverse portfolio there, right?
Well, you'll find that there are so many parallels that all of these entrepreneurs face similar challenges. What really sets them apart is how they choose to metabolize and address those challenges. And so worked with this incredible entrepreneur, second generation owner, and she really felt like her business had more. She felt it, but she didn't have any hard proof behind her to sort of rally the troops and get everyone, rowing in the same direction. And when we met, she shared her story with me, and then I took her financials for a few years, reviewed them. You're right. There is so much more, right? So in 1 year, we were able to increase her enrollment, the number of children that she served, by 30%, and to grow her bottom line by 100%. So
that's amazing, Michelle. Why? Those are great numbers. Wow. Even for someone like me who's not a numbers person, those are very impressive numbers.
Well, the thing is, and just to be clear, it's not anything that I did. So I think that's the most important thing, is that she had built an incredible business. She had already done all of the work, right? She had a great culture. She had a great following, a great reputation in the community. She just needed that little extra, that plan and the guiding light to get through it. And then she executed.
But so I heard guiding light there. Do you sometimes see yourself kind of as that, let's say maybe a Sherpa or that guiding light to help businesses to see things that they can't find or see on their own?
I would say a chauffeur. I wouldn't say a Sherpa. Okay. I would say more of a chauffeur. I have a little black hat and a suit, and I sit on a booster seat and I drive the limo. I know, the ways and the Google Maps and just sort of how to navigate to get there. But the idea has to be good. It has to be sound. And all of these folks are just phenomenal people.
So are there certain businesses or certain sectors that you can't help? That sometimes, people are like, hey, Michelle, I need help. And with this, I know what you do. Are there some that and I don't want to say beyond helping, but are there sometimes cases where you say no?
So I honestly think that there's always a path forward in anything. Unless you're trying to defraud the government, then there's no path forward. I hope you look at an orange. So there's not a sector that I would stay away from, but what I will say is I perform a lot of diligence before I take on a client. And so the biggest reason is we're a small boutique firm. We have limited capacity, right? And so I want to make sure that the owner and I are philosophically aligned. Mm-hmm. So even if I know your business and I know what we can do to make it successful, if you and I don't see eye to eye on philosophy and strategy, it's probably not a good fit, and neither of us is going to be served from that. So it's shocking, to hear a business will pass on an engagement, but definitely we have to be incredibly thoughtful.
Makes absolute sense there. Thanks for sharing that, Michelle.
Oh, of course.
So let's move on to the next segment here, which is one of my favorites, called Barrels of Wisdom.
Barrels of Wisdom.
So again, keeping on brand with the wine, right? So obviously you're on the search bar, right? That's the name of the podcast. So the listener's favorite question is always, Michelle, what's the last thing in your search bar?
That's a great question. Did you come up with that?
No. I didn't. I don't know. That's a good. I don't know. I'm gonna have to search that in the search.
Perfect. So I was actually looking for a continuing education course related to a tax certification.
Okay.
Taxes. I know it's very expensive.
That seems so on brand for you, Michelle. Oh my gosh.
Yes. It's hashtag talk nerdy to me. Right?
Yes, there you go. I love it. So I'm assuming that's related to helping your clients, to helping the business, right?
Yes.
So I'm assuming you use Google for that?
I did use the Google, as we call it.
Yes, absolutely. Did you find what you were looking for?
Of course.
Yes.
A very expensive course in San Diego. I'll be signing up shortly.
So there was only one result that can deliver that.
Yeah. So for what I'm looking for, right? So we're talking about optimizing performance and oftentimes the financial benefit. Correspondingly, you pay additional taxes. So a lot of times when we start a business, not everyone is thinking about the tax implications. So as we come together and we talk about optimization, sometimes we have to adjust the actual foundation of the business to ensure that we're garnering the appropriate tax benefits. And so part of making sure that we're full service, providing the best that we can, is considering the tax picture for our clients.
Absolutely. Even for me as a small business owner, it's I had no idea kind of how that even works, right? There's different corporations, there's different structures for the business to, is this a write-off, that not a write-off? Where does what bucket does this one go into? Does this go for financial year 2023 or 2024? All these little things. So you take that probably times several million for my small business. I can only imagine how complicated that gets. And so you're able to do that for your clients on that large scale.
It's part of it. I think the thing that people don't realize is the CFO, the only sport I can equate it to is gymnastics. So you have all of these individual events in the Olympics for gymnastics, bar, beam, floor. But the most coveted gold medal is for the all-around gymnast, the one who's good at all of them, but maybe the best only at one. And that's how I see the CFO. So even though an organization, even though I'm a CPA and the business I'm working with may have a CPA that prepares and files their taxes, their CPA may not necessarily understand intimately the landscape of their business.
They only know that one discipline.
Right. And so marrying it all together, we do that with the audit team, right? Also a CPA. We do that with the tax team, also a CPA. Being well-versed in all of that allows us to offer the best to our clients. And whether it's, small scale or larger scale, it's meaningful to that business. So whether it's saving $50,000 or $500,000, it's meaningful to that entrepreneur. And that's what we want to do.
I love it. That makes sense. And if you ever need another analogy, you said all around gymnastics, maybe decathlon might be another one as well, right? So you got to do so many different things in track and field. Okay. But you do look more, or I don't want to presume, you do seem more like a gymnast and a decathlete to me.
My daughters are in gymnastics, yes. And probably if my husband had his druthers, they would be in track and field. He has them climbing trees, but no.
Okay, that was a great analogy though, Michelle. Thank you for sharing that.
I worked for a long time on it.
So Michelle, you're a trusted advisor and you are brought in to support these executives within the company. Where do you see the world of business going, right? So this is a great question because we want you to put on your thinking hat and kind of predict the future here a little bit. In the next 2 to 3 years, what are major changes you're watching happening right in front of your eyes now?
So I'm 44. I was born in the 70s, and I remember the Dewey Decimal System. I remember not having the internet. I remember writing papers by hand. And I would say in the last 20 years, the world has changed so significantly, but the last 5 even more. I think the pandemic really made us reassess the landscape of business and also introduced a complete change in the balance of power between employers and employees. And as a result, we're seeing businesses function very differently. And obviously, one of the biggest things is access to talent, right? We all want that top tier talent. We want to procure it, and then we want to retain it. There are many challenges that are on the horizon, but if we're going to do anything meaningful, it's going to be by having the right people on our team. And so that's something I'm really excited about, how organizations over these next few years embrace that change and really invest in the team that's championing the mission of the organization. I think it's really going to help separate some organizations from others, and there are going to be some incredible victories related to that. But there are challenges. I mean, those people are free, right? There's
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, when I'm hiring someone, I think the most important thing I look at is their passion, right? Do they actually care about this? Because that's something you can't teach, right? You can teach someone how to make a website, how to code something. You can probably teach someone how to do an Excel spreadsheet, but you can't make them care about it, right? And being passionate. So I couldn't agree more, is kind of having that right talent in place. And now you zoom out a little bit. What does that mean? That means that these people that are passionate and that actually care, they're going to cost more now, right? Because they're not just going to get hired here in Tampa. They can get a job anywhere else. And so that puts a pressure on businesses.
You know, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about the playbook and the standard things that we deploy.
Yeah.
Usually the first thing that we see is that an organization has hired too many folks at too low of a price point. So I think there's sticker shock associated with what that talent may look like. And so rather than procuring that talent, what we're doing is we're amassing potentially an army at a lower price point, but overall it's more expensive. And so in the last year, we've rebuilt a couple of departments for larger organizations, 1 to 300 million, who found themselves in that exact position. And by not having the right level of talent, it actually impacted their bottom line beyond the additional expense. They weren't able to grow and service their customer base because they couldn't rely on the information that they were receiving. So how can we afford to do that? We have someone who's at 60 and really, we need someone who's at 90. Well, let's look at our processes. Do we need 8 people? I bet we don't. Right. I bet we probably need 5 people. So take that same pool of money and reallocate it. So just a lot of understanding the landscape, insight, essentially, right? Same thing that you do, providing that oversight.
Oh, it's a great answer. Thank you, Michelle.
You guys, he's really excited about that answer.
No, so far there's been no misses, all great answers.
Because the miss is that your glass is almost empty.
Yeah. Okay. We'll pour some more here, and I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question here. So I want to try to distill it down. What's the one thing that companies can do right now to be financially sustainable?
So that's a great question. How long did you work on that one? That was,
Thank you.
They're all good, but that was really fantastic. Oh, thank you. So I would say the biggest thing is making sure that they have the appropriate insight to how the business is performing. So don't discount the importance of accounting, which is making sure that the historical information is being captured properly. And then the finance, which is interpreting and analyzing and then projecting. At one point, you used the term crystal ball. Mm-hmm. And if we've got good, clean information that we can then perform analysis on, we can project because we know our markets. We're the leaders of that particular market, right? It almost gives us a crystal ball impact of knowing what's going to happen and what changes we need to make to shift and pivot to really maximize opportunities. So I would say if there's one thing that you do, make sure that you invest in having good, clean data and then understanding how it can be interpreted into actionable results. Because just handing you the picture doesn't tell you what the picture means.
Right. I couldn't agree more from a marketing standpoint even, right? Because we call it data integrity, right? So you want to track everything, right? In the entire customer journey, all the touch points. Are you getting accurate data, right? So a great example is we used to count an impression on a website no matter where that ad showed up, right?
Yes.
And then we figured out as marketers, well, wait a minute, that person didn't even scroll down. They didn't even see that, right? So that's a great example of having accurate data to make decisions there. People even have an opportunity to click, right?
Yes.
And when they come to the website, are we capturing everyone on the website and knowing what they're doing, right? So having kind of that data, I think kind of crosses both fields, financial or marketing, so that you can make educated decisions on what you want to do and how you can be successful from there.
You're so right. And you introduced me to something a few months ago that I thought was incredible. And it just goes to show that it really is the data that's then translated to information that gives you the insights. And it doesn't matter if it's financial, if it's marketing, whatever it is, it's going to drive better decision making. And it was when you introduced a dashboard that you had been working on. And it was perfect because it was a visual representation that was essentially a narrative for what the performance was, right?
Yeah.
So who doesn't love that? It made it so easy, so palatable, and not everybody has that. So to understand the importance of not just having clean data, but interpreting it into meaningful information, it's fantastic.
Thank you for that. And I really appreciate that, Michelle, because we do work hard on having the right data, the accurate data, and then showcasing it in a dashboard. And then from there, interpreting the results, making insights and recommendations. What does this data actually mean? What is your investment giving you? What is your return on that investment? So I think dashboards are very important.
Yes, we also love dashboards.
Awesome. So let's move on to the next segment, the perfect pour, which we already poured here, which I think was pretty perfect personally, but also a segment here on the podcast. And so we sent you ahead of time some Mad Libs, AKA fill in the blanks, story to help create a wine label for you, for your brand, for William Stanley, CFO there. And I really would like to see what you came up with. First of all, did you do your homework, Michelle? And did you come up with what you're going to put on your wine label?
You know I did.
Okay, perfect. Why would I even doubt that?
Do you want to know what it's called?
Let's go. Just take us from the top here.
So if I were to create a bottle of my own wine blend, I would call it Persistence. What? Yes, Persistence. And my bottle has 2 ingredients.
Okay.
Vim and vigor.
Nice. Okay.
And the blend is best for visionary entrepreneurs who want to really optimize their performance and actualize their vision.
Fantastic.
Oh, yes.
I can't wait to print it onto a label for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I want to focus in on those 2 ingredients, Vim and Vigor. Can you elaborate on that more and let our audience know what are those ingredients and why are those the 2 key ingredients in your wine?
So I think it fits with the brand of persistence, right? I said earlier that there's always a path forward. There's always a way that we can improve things. I think that we just have to have a little bit of patience, good understanding, and grit and determination to be able to push forward. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Yes.
It's not easy. It's a humbling experience to be an entrepreneur. If you say that you've never failed, then you're lying to yourself, right? We fall down all the time. It's about
It's getting comfortable with hearing no,
yes.
Right? It's just wanted to add that in there because myself as an entrepreneur there's so many, you got to be able to move on from a no, right? It's all about how many times you get up, not how many times you fall down.
It's funny. I said to my dear colleague, I said, I've been married for almost 25 years, but I am rejected on a daily basis when I go out and I talk to people. And it's really an odd feeling going from more of a corporate environment where everybody wanted to, friend you on LinkedIn because, maybe there was a synergy or an opportunity to sell something, to almost taking a stutter step back when they shake your hand. They're like, you have your own business? I do. I do. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to bottle it, put the label on there and try it. So once that happens, we're going to have you back here on the podcast.
I don't know if the team will allow it, but if they do, I'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Well, until then, everyone, thank you for listening. Michelle, cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining today.
Pleasure.
And it was amazing. I hope the listeners had a great time. I did. I don't think it disappointed. You can connect with Michelle and me on LinkedIn. Stay in touch with us. Follow our journeys, our entrepreneurial journeys. See where we go next. As you guys heard, Michelle's only been doing since February 2022. So you're still at the start of this pretty much. So I can't wait to see where you end up here. Like I said, we're going to have you back here. And of course, if you have any SEO or digital marketing questions, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. As the founder, CEO of Digital Neighbor, you can probably tell I love talking about this topic. I really hope we filled your glass with digital wisdom, and we're looking forward to seeing you for the next episode of The Search Bar. Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you.